Imagine you're sitting in a room full of people. Someone starts telling a story, and within the first two sentences, you already know exactly where it's going. You can see the punchline coming. You can predict the reaction of every person around you. You know what someone is about to say before they say it. So, you wait, quietly, patiently, a little exhausted. Not because you're arrogant, not because you think you're better than anyone in that room, but because your mind simply moves faster than the moment allows. And here's what nobody talks about. That speed doesn't always feel like a gift. Sometimes it feels like a weight, a quiet, invisible heaviness that follows you everywhere. But what actually happens inside the mind of someone like this? Here's the thing most people don't understand about a highly intelligent mind. It doesn't just think more, it connects more. Neuroscientists have observed that people with significantly higher cognitive ability show something called hypersensitive default mode network activation. That's the part of your brain that runs in the background, making connections, drawing patterns, linking ideas that have no obvious relationship to each other. Think of it this way. In most people's minds, flipping one light switch turns on one light. But in the mind of a highly intelligent person, flip one switch and the entire room shifts. Every light connects to every other light. One thought triggers 10 more. One question opens 5 doors simultaneously. And it happens involuntarily. You're not choosing to think this deeply. Your brain simply won't allow anything less. Research suggests this is why highly intelligent people often describe their minds as exhausting, not because they're weak, but because the thinking never truly stops. But here's the contradiction most people miss entirely. If this kind of thinking is so powerful, why does it so often feel like a problem? Because the deeper your mind runs, the harder it becomes to find someone who can meet you there. You may have noticed this in your own life. Conversations that feel shallow before they even begin. Friendships that stay on the surface no matter how hard you try to go deeper. A persistent, quiet feeling that even in a crowded room, you are somehow alone. Psychologists call this intellectual loneliness, and it's different from ordinary loneliness. It's not about having no one around you, it's about having no one who truly sees what's happening inside you. Nikola Tesla, one of the most gifted minds in modern history, spent the final years of his life almost entirely isolated, not because the world rejected him, but because the depth of his inner world had no match in the world outside. And research on gifted adults consistently shows the same pattern. The higher the cognitive ability, the more frequently people report feeling fundamentally unseen. Not misunderstood in the ordinary sense, but unseen at a level that is difficult to even put into words. Here's what makes this even more interesting. Is this loneliness simply an unavoidable side effect of high intelligence, or is something else happening? Something psychological that causes highly intelligent people to quietly push the world away without even realizing it? That answer is more surprising than you might expect. And this is where it gets fascinating. Because that push away, that quiet withdrawal from the world, often has nothing to do with arrogance. It has everything to do with what happens inside of a highly intelligent mind when they look at their own work, their own efforts, their own life. They see, with painful clarity, exactly how far the reality falls short of what it could be. Psychologist Brené Brown spent years studying perfectionism and found something that reframes everything. Perfectionism isn't about high standards. It's a self-protective behavior, a shield, a way of saying, if I do this perfectly, nothing can touch me. And in highly intelligent minds, that shield becomes almost impossible to put down.
Lewis Terman conducted one of the longest psychological studies in history, following hundreds of gifted high IQ individuals across their entire lifetimes. What he found was quietly devastating. Many of them never reached their potential, not because of lack of ability, but because their internal standards were so impossibly high that starting felt more dangerous than never trying at all. You may recognize this pattern in yourself. The project you never submitted because it wasn't quite ready. The idea you never shared because the words didn't feel precise enough. The version of yourself you keep postponing until conditions are finally perfect. But here's what the research doesn't immediately tell you. If perfectionism traps so many highly intelligent people, what do the ones who actually thrive do differently? The answer to that question is more uncomfortable than most people expect, because it turns out raw intelligence doesn't automatically make you better at thinking clearly. In fact, in certain situations, it can make you significantly worse. Cognitive scientist Keith Stanovich spent decades studying what he called disrationality, the surprisingly common condition of intelligent people making deeply irrational decisions. And what he found challenges almost everything we assume about smart people. A high IQ gives you a more powerful mental engine, but it doesn't automatically give you better steering. Here's what that looks like in real life. Imagine you need to make a relatively simple decision, but instead of deciding, you begin building a case. You construct an elaborate internal argument. You consider 17 angles. You find evidence that supports what you already emotionally want to do, and your intelligent mind packages it so convincingly that it feels like pure logic. Psychologists call this motivated reasoning, and the more intellectually capable you are, the better you become at doing it without even noticing. You're not thinking your way to the truth, you're using your intelligence to dress up a feeling in the clothes of a conclusion. Studies show that highly intelligent people are not less prone to cognitive bias. In many cases, they are more prone to it, because they are simply better at justifying whatever their emotions have already decided. So, if intelligence alone doesn't separate those who thrive from those who struggle, what does? That answer lives somewhere much deeper, in a place most people never think to look. And that place is the one most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. The questions that arrive at 2 a.m. and refuse to leave. The moments when you're surrounded by laughter and celebration, and something in you quietly wonders what any of it actually means. The feeling that just beneath the surface of ordinary life, there is something vast and unresolved that nobody else seems to notice. Psychologist James Webb spent years studying gifted individuals and identified something he called existential depression. And unlike ordinary depression, it isn't triggered by loss or circumstance. It's triggered by awareness, by seeing too clearly, by asking questions that most people never think to ask, and finding that the world offers very few satisfying answers. Albert Camus wrote that the absurd is born from the confrontation between the human need for meaning and the world's silence in response. Most people never feel that confrontation deeply enough to be disturbed by it. Highly intelligent people often feel it before they have the words to describe it. As a child, you may have asked questions that made adults uncomfortable. As an adult, you may carry a quiet restlessness that no achievement, relationship, or distraction has ever fully resolved. And here's what matters most about that. This is not damage. This is depth. The same mind that asks the hardest questions is the same mind capable of the most profound understanding. The restlessness isn't something to fix, it's something to understand. But understanding it raises one final question. If this is who you truly are, what does it mean to finally stop fighting it? Go back to that room for a moment. The conversation is still happening. Everyone is laughing, and you are sitting there, already 3 steps ahead, quietly waiting for the moment to catch up to where your mind already is. You used to think something was wrong with you. But here is what psychology actually tells us. That exhaustion you feel is the cost of processing reality at a higher resolution than the world was built for. The loneliness is the natural consequence of an inner life too deep for surface-level connection. The perfectionism is a mind that can see the ideal so clearly that anything less feels like settling. The overthinking is a brain making connections that most people's minds simply never reach. None of it is dysfunction. All of it is depth. You were never broken.
You were never too much. You were never thinking too hard or feeling too deeply or asking questions that didn't need answers. You were simply wired differently, and different has never meant less. If this resonated with something inside you, you might find yourself asking one more question. What happens when someone like this finally finds their people? When a mind like yours finally meets the world it was always looking for? That's exactly what we explore next.